Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Thriving Over Surviving podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of our autoimmune diagnoses, but ultimately how we thrive in spite of it. I'm your host, Edie Sahijian. I was diagnosed in 2015 with multiple sclerosis. I've learned a lot about MS in myself over the past few years, but the most important thing I realize is that I am going to live my best life. And that is what thriving means to me. But what thriving means to each person is different. And that's what we explore on this show. My core values are growth and humor. So my goal is to learn a bit and enjoy ourselves while we're building community. MS and other autoimmune diseases tend to be a bit of a bummer if we let them. So why not battle back by finding our joy? Are you a spoonie? How about a snowflake? Are you really a warrior? I don't know if I fall into any of those categories some days. I do try. But our guests today sure are warriors in my book. Cassidy and Julie have had stem cell treatments, HSCT. If you haven't heard about this, it is quite a wild ride. These are the strongest women that you will ever hear from. I cannot wait to share their journey with you. Come along as we chat it up with Cassidy and Julie. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Thriving Over Surviving. Today, I'm talking to Cassidy Chapman and Julie Everhart about their journeys with multiple sclerosis. Cassidy, I'd love for you to start off and tell us a little bit about your diagnosis story. Kick us off, right?
Okay, well, on January 26th, I had a regular doctor's appointment and went in and had expressed concern. It was a Monday, and had expressed concern because the previous Friday, I was in my first year of law school, and the previous Friday in class, my speech was really slurred. And over the weekend, I noticed that the left side of my face wasn't moving. And I was particularly self-conscious about it because it was almost my birthday. And we were going to have a big thing for my birthday. And so I had this regular doctor's appointment on Monday, went in, showed them what was going on with my face. And they said they thought that it was probably Bell's palsy, but sent me to an urgent care. The urgent care doctor asked me to stick my tongue out. My tongue stuck straight to the left, not straight out. And so he actually jumped back, hit his head on the wall and said, "You need to immediately go to the ER. I think you've had a stroke."
Okay.
And so I was rushed to the ER by a friend and ended up being admitted, had a CT that night. They saw something. It definitely wasn't a stroke, but they didn't know what it was. So they wanted to do further testing. And so on the next day, I did have an MRI, there were blood tests, various different things. I did not have a spinal tap at that appointment. But by the end of the day, on the 27th, the doctors with all the med students, because it was a teaching university, came in, and my friends were visiting me at that time too. So I had several friends in my room because my birthday was the next day. And so we're kind of like, oh, am I going to be out? Like, am I healthy? What's going to happen with my birthday? And told me that I had MS. And fortunately, I was at least familiar with MS because a friend's mother was diagnosed when we were babies. And so I grew up knowing about MS. But honestly, at the time, I thought, I'd rather have this be a stroke because, it would be a little bit easier to treat and to manage versus I know, MS obviously is a lifelong thing. And, so this was back in 2004, January 27th, 2004 is when I was diagnosed. And like I said, it was, my first year of law school, the day before my 23rd birthday. So, birthdays kind of became a bummer for a while after that. And, things progressed. I did end up having a spinal tap a few months later, and my levels were extremely elevated. Though I had 6 lesions on my brain when they diagnosed me with MS, which is why they didn't even do the spinal tap immediately. Because I know MS can be very difficult to diagnose. And that was not the case for me because I had 6 active lesions at that time.
You know, it's very interesting you say that, because sometimes, well, when I was diagnosed, they said, we don't know how many lesions you have because I had so many, but they were able to say you have 2 on your spinal cord, and that's why you can't feel anything all over your body.
Yeah.
So the fact that they could count them was kind of nice, because then you have a measuring point. So what happened with you after that in terms of, did you do DMTs, disease modifying therapies?
I did. So I'm so old school, having been diagnosed in 2004, that there were only 4 injectables on the market at that point. And so the strongest, quote unquote, injectable, the most progressive one that they thought was suitable for me, and it had been on the market for 5 years, was Rebif. So I immediately started on Rebif. I was on that for right around 3 years. I took a year off without doctor permission, but I'm stubborn, and I decided I didn't have time in my life to have MS anymore, because I was, new in my career, and I didn't tell anybody that I was professionally, I didn't tell anybody that I was diagnosed. Everybody in school knew, but when I started working, it was something that I didn't tell people because I was an attorney, and I felt like it would be seen as a weakness. And actually my very first day at the firm that I worked for, I had to get there early because my boss had oral arguments for the Nebraska Supreme Court and wanted me to tag along. And so we get on the elevator to leave the building to drive from Omaha, Nebraska, where we were, to Lincoln, Nebraska. And I said, okay, so what's the case about? And he said, well, it's actually about a woman with MS, and she's in a nursing home. She's in her 50s, early 50s. And I thought, oh, yep, nope. Never going to tell anybody. Like, if this, that was just like a sign to me that
it's pretty traumatic, though.
Yeah, that I had to keep it a secret. And so I was able to keep it a secret for about a year. And then I did end up, like I said, I went off the DMTs without doctor's advice and just kind of quit doing my MRIs because I had so many bad reactions with the Rebif. It made me so flu-like. And I just didn't feel well. And so after about a year of that, I did go back to my doctor, and I was having a really bad relapse. And so at that point, they decided to put me on Tysabri, which was fairly new on the market. And I was on Tysabri for about 3 years. And then my JC virus levels, the John Cunningham virus, that causes PML, which was something that came out early on when Tysabri came on the market. And Tysabri was actually pulled from the market for a while when they discovered that people were developing this brain infection called PML. So my levels for the JC virus, which ultimately is what causes the PML, were so high that they took me off of that. My doctor wasn't quite sure what to do with me. And so then he just put me on Copaxone.
So this is number 4.
No.
This is 3?
This is 3, yeah. So
okay.
1 was Rebif, 2 was, then I took my break where I don't have MS anymore. Like, that's what I did in my mind. I just went into denial and decided, you know what? Nope, I don't have time for this. I'm a lawyer. Stupid. So I had the year gap. So that's why it seems more.
Okay.
And so did the Tysabri for quite a while. And ultimately had to open up to my boss and to the firm that I worked for that I had MS, and I had been working there for a year, and they were all shocked and honestly horrified because all they knew about were the cases that we had with people with debilitating MS, that were in nursing homes. And so it was scary. But yeah, after a while, I had to quit the Tysabri. My doctor just immediately put me on Copaxone. I was on that for a whopping 2 months and had another really bad relapse. And he said, obviously this isn't working. We need to do something else. And so he put me on Tecfidera, and that was brand new to the market. So I was one of the first people that got Tecfidera when it came on the market. I'd have to look at the paperwork to remember what year that is. It's 17 and a half years that I've been dealing with this. So in any case, I ended up being on Tecfidera for 5 years, and it worked fairly well for me for quite a while. I mean, I did still relapse every year or so. The side effects, again, weren't great. I lost 20 pounds because
I could use some of that then, maybe.
Yeah, and at the time I needed it because I had been on steroids, and so it was good to lose all the steroids, steroid weight. And then, actually not long after starting Tecfidera, I participated in a study at the University of Iowa under Dr. Terry Walls doing the paleo diet for MS. And so I lost more weight, which was, again, fine because I'd been on so many steroids. Continued on the Tecfidera. The paleo diet definitely helped. And my doctor was very pleased to see that some of my lesions were getting smaller and things were improving in that respect. But ultimately, after 5 years, the Tecfidera didn't work anymore. And so my doctor put me on Gilenya. And I was only on that for, 3 months, maybe 4-ish months. It wasn't very long. And I was having some really bad side effects. And my doctor just was not comfortable with keeping me on it, even though I said it's worth me fighting through and actually staying on this med because, options are limited at that point. I was always being put on the newest and the strongest because my MS was so aggressive.
So let me ask you, at this point, what are your lingering MS effects in your body? Numbness or what was still happening?
To date or at that point?
At that point.
At that point, and I guess I should back up a little bit because I actually became disabled in 2015 while I was on Tecfidera. My cognitive dysfunction and my chronic fatigue were so bad that I couldn't work anymore. And that was about 3 years in on the Tecfidera. And so I continued on the Tecfidera for 2 more years after disability and then tried the Gilenya. And, it didn't work. And, so, ultimately that led me down the path to receiving HSCT because I was out of options. At that point, there were 3 options on the table. I could either get HSCT or I could have Lemtrada or Ocrevus, and Lemtrada causes kidney issues. Well, I only have 1 kidney, so that was off the table. And Ocrevus, there's a risk of cancer, and I already have a high family risk of cancer, so that was kind of scary too. But at the end of the day, choosing the lesser of 2 evils, Ocrevus seemed like it was going to be the lesser of the 2. But fortunately for me, I did get into the stem cell transplant study with Dr. Burt at Northwestern Medicine.
I do want to ask real quick if when you did the Walls protocol and that autoimmune, did that change any functions in your body at all? Do your symptoms of MS lessen?
They did. And so I have kept up with paleo pretty consistently. I do cheat from time to time, and especially when I was having relapses, I can't do the food prep and the regular shopping that you need to do in order to follow a paleo diet because it's, a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables and, which requires regular shopping. And when I'm sick, I couldn't do that. And, and I was by myself, living alone. And so it, it was what it was.
So you did it helped, but did not relieve all your symptoms.
No.
You're continuing to have relapses. Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to get that full picture. So, and Julie did the same treatment, right, Julie?
I did. So I was actually technically treated before Cassidy calendar-wise, in that I was treated by the same doctor, Dr. Burt at Northwestern in Chicago, in February of 2018. But my story is almost the exact reverse of Cassidys in that I was released from the hospital after my stem cell transplant 2 weeks before my 2-year diagnosis-versary, I call it. So, and I'm just over 3 years post-transplant right now. So I'm ecstatic to say that I've been in remission from MS longer than I was sick with it. So
when you were first diagnosed, what kind of symptoms were you having?
So I was a lot of people, like Cassidy said, have, lingering issues, that takes a while to get diagnosed. But I actually I was having some migraine type headaches in January of 2016. And my mom has migraines, like there's a history of migraines in her family that like all her sisters kind of all developed them around their late 20s. So I was 29 at the time. My primary care doctor actually did a brain MRI in January of 2016 just to make sure there was nothing crazy going on, as he said, and it was just, typical migraines, whatever. And it was. I mean, my MRI in January was completely clean. So they said migraines, gave me some medicine to take when I thought I felt one coming on. But they never really went away, and they just progressively got worse. And right at that same time, I was actually 4.5 years out of law school. So I had just decided to go out on my own and start my own law practice, actually at the exact same time in January of 2016 when my migraines started. So again, I was like, migraines, fine, whatever. I don't even have time for that. So I'm just going to do 10 times more than I was doing when all I have is migraines and it's fine and, whatever. And so I went into work one Monday morning, and it was the day after St. Patrick's Day, or St. Patrick's Day being celebrated in Chicago. And if you've ever seen or even heard of the St. Patrick's Day celebrations in Chicago,
don't they have the Green River?
They dye the river green. It's like I don't know if it's like the second or third like biggest city in the country to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Okay. And so when I came to work on Monday, walking a little crooked and slurring my words, not that in any way, shape, or form would I have ever gone to work drunk, ever. Let's just put that on the record.
I mean, we're not accusing you of anything, Julie.
Well, but my boss and my secretary apparently were. I mean, they didn't say anything to me.
Oh, no.
But I came in that morning and I was getting ready for court, and my secretary was helping me grab the files and put everything together. And I was just like, my eyes were fuzzy. I couldn't quite see straight. And I mean, I had been drinking the day before, but not enough to still be feeling like that. I mean, I drove myself to work and was fine. But then all of a sudden, my eyes started going weird. And I remember walking down the hallway to leave my office for court. And I turned the corner and I hit the wall. Like it just jumped out of nowhere. And my boss kind of looked at me and was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was weird, but yeah, I'm fine. All right, I'm going to court. See you later." So I went to court and I did my thing. And I remember standing in front of the judge and I couldn't read the paper that was in front of me. And I had to like wind up holding it all the way up like this. So the judge was like, "Did you forget your glasses, counsel?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't even wear glasses." "No, but I'm okay." So when I was walking back to my office, I remember having to cover one eye to be able to look both ways in traffic, crossing streets in downtown Chicago. And I literally felt unsafe because I couldn't tell if the cars were close or how fast they were moving. It was like my vision was just deteriorating almost minute by minute. And so when I got back to the office, I called my mom, who is a nurse, and explained to her what was going on. And then while I was on the phone with her, I literally started feeling numb. Sounds weird, but I started feeling numb, like on my side. And as I'm having a 30-minute conversation with her, basically in hindsight, she's telling me she's going into a panic at her work, listening to this, thinking she's on the phone with her 29-year-old daughter who's currently having a stroke. As I'm explaining to her, I feel my whole left side, it's starting to go numb, Mom. And like my eyes are weird. And I never remember that part of the story until Cassidy just mentioned it. she told me to go into the bathroom and look in the mirror and stick my tongue out and tell her what it looks like. And I was like, oh, that's weird. It goes all the way to the left. And she was like, all right, I just got in the car. I'm leaving my office right now. I'll be at your office in about 15 minutes. You're done for the day. Like, I'm picking you up and, you know, we're going. She had her neurologist from her migraines. So she called her neurologist's office and they were like, you need to come straight to the hospital. They were essentially waiting for me when we got there. I mean, we still had to wait for 6 hours, of course, but they were ready to see me once it was my turn.
They knew you were coming.
By the time I actually got my name called, they had to put me in a wheelchair to get me to the bed because I was literally dragging my leg and I had gone completely numb from the left side of my chest down and was limping and dragging my left leg and couldn't see straight.
Julie, what were you thinking? What did you think was happening to you?
I figured I was having a stroke, but everyone was too afraid to tell me. And I figured they were too afraid because I had a family member who 2 years ago or 2 years previously had a massive stroke. And so I just figured that's what was happening. And they didn't want to freak me out and have me think that exactly, you know, how debilitating it was to her was going to happen to me. And I mean, my aunt's, you know, 50 something, I'm 29. And so I thought that's what it is. They're just not telling me and nobody really knows how bad it's going to get. So we'll just wait and see. And I figured it couldn't be anything super bad because 2 months ago, my brain was fine. I mean, it didn't click to me that it could be something that had been building or, you know, something that was going to be with me forever if it wasn't there 2 months ago.
Sure, of course.
So, of course, they sent me for an MRI. And when they came back with the results, they basically said, you know, typically you have, you know, we don't diagnose people right away, but, you know, your MRI lit up like a Christmas tree. There are so many lesions in your brain, we can't count them. There's a massive one in your cervical spine and 3 large ones on my actual spinal column, which, like you said, makes sense why you can't walk or feel anything. And and so the doctor was like, so, you know, you have multiple sclerosis and, you know, do you have any questions? And I said,
like you don't have, you know everything about MS.
I was like, yeah, I guess my question is, what is MS? I had no idea what it was. I had no freaking clue.
Wow.
And I was like, well, what is MS? And he just kind of looked at me like, I mean, how do you answer that in like a one or two, you know, like he looked as like he didn't have an answer as much as I didn't know what the heck I was talking about. And I just looked at my mom, who clearly as a nurse knew what it was. And she was just like silent mom bawling. And I just looked at the doctor and was like, never mind. That says it all. I'm good. I don't need
He didn't know how to tell you your life has changed completely.
Yeah. I don't need to know exactly what it is right now, but I know it's real freaking bad by the look on mom's face. And then he was like, well, you know, we'll send someone in and they'll bring you pamphlets and all this kind of stuff. And, oh yeah, don't Google it. And we'll be back, you know, in a little bit to talk about it more. So, you know, what do I do when he walks out of the room? And my mom's like, okay, well, I'm going to go, you know, make a phone call. I'm like, all right, bye. What the frick is MS? Oh my God. It's like wheelchairs, you know, canes. Basically, your life is over, but you're not going to die of it. You're just going to like slowly
suffer from
the inside out until your life is miserable and horrible. And then you'll still have to live with it for a while is like what the gist I got was. And
by the way, MS has the highest rate of alcoholism and addiction of all the autoimmune diseases. So there's that on top of it to think about.
Well, that's probably part of when, you know, you get diagnosed. They're like, you got to stay in the hospital and get steroids for 5 days because, you know, that's the first thing I wanted to do was like, wait, actually, my first question is there a glass of wine I can get somewhere? Like, I don't care that it's also really bad for inflammation. I don't care. Like, no.
If I can just pipe in really quick, Julie and I are both lawyers. And so part of the way that I was able to hide my MS when I was having relapses and practicing law, like I had a bad bout of vertigo from it. I had balance issues, various different things that happened over the years. And there was an instance, very much like Julie, like where I ran into a wall and everybody's like, what the heck, Cassidy, are you drunk? And I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. Because as lawyers, it's stereotypically okay to be an alcoholic. Like that.
I mean, as long as it's not 9 a.m. and you just showed up for work,
exactly.
Like in my diagnosis story.
Exactly. And so like, it was more socially acceptable for me to allow people to think that I was a drunk than because there are so many drunk lawyers. Like,
well, especially like later in the day, like if you're doing networking things after work, I mean,
always drink.
On a good day, you could make it to 5 o'clock and come home and crawl into your bed. But if you had to, socialize or do a dinner or whatever, and, like when I was diagnosed, I didn't even realize I was slurring my words. Like the cognition doesn't click to you the way that you're presenting yourself. I didn't even notice I was limping until someone initially pointed it out to me. So
the other day I'm having a meeting with my two bosses and one of them's like, something is wrong with you, Edie. And I'm like, really? I think I'm fine. She goes, no, something's going on. And luckily they know. So they saw it and recognized it. And then the next day I woke up with crazy vertigo. So something was happening, right? But I needed her to tell me because I didn't think, I thought I was fine. So I get it. Now, let me ask you guys. So you both have had the HSCT, right? But Julie, you didn't have any DMTs before that?
So technically I had 2. When I was first diagnosed, they basically gave me 4 different ones and told me to read the side effects and whatever side effects I thought were most tolerable to pick that one. Like there was no difference between any of them. So I got to choose between daily injections, which at the time I had no experience with needles or insulin or anything like that. So it was give yourself daily shots, one that would potentially make you lose your hair, one that came with the risk of the deadly brain disease, which all the symptoms to, be diagnosed with that were the same as MS. So there was really no way to know until you were dead of the fatal brain disease. And the other one was a pill, but it might give you stomach issues. So I was like, all right, I'll take the pill with stomach issues for sure. No problem.
You took Tecfidera?
Yeah.
See, I know because
stomach issues is the understatement of the century. I went from having 2 relapses that took my vision and my ability to walk so I couldn't leave the house to going on this drug and regaining my vision and ability to walk and not feeling comfortable being more than 5 minutes from a bathroom, maybe 30 on a good day. I was sick all the time. It was miserable. Like I did it after 2 months, I finally called my neurologist and was like, this is ridiculous. I can't even go to work. I feel physically fine, but I can't go to work because I can't sit in the car for 30 minutes. And they told me, well, sometimes it takes 6 months or so to adjust. So give it 6 months. And if it doesn't work, we'll find something else. And I was like, I am not going to sit in the bathroom for 6 months. I'm sorry. Like, if you're telling me that that's the only option, you're fired. So I fired her and got another MS specialist this time who basically was like, yeah, your old doctor was an idiot, didn't know what they were talking about. You should have gone straight onto the strongest drug that we have on the market right now, which was Tysabri, the one with the fatal brain disease. But he was like, none of this other stuff is going to work. I mean, I can put you on any of these other ones, and it's only a matter of time until you fail it. And when I first met with him, I'll never forget, I had just turned 30 And he had reviewed all my MRIs, you know, so seen all of my imaging before I walked into his office. And he looked at me and like his jaw dropped open when my mom and I walked in. And he goes, I don't know if I have the right room. He thought I was a different patient because he couldn't believe that given what my MRIs looked like, I was walking like a normal person. Wow. And he was like, you know, you never know what's going to happen with MS, but you need to mentally prepare yourself to be in a wheelchair primarily, like by the time you're 35, if you continue to progress at this level. And so basically I was looking at 5 years is what he told me. And my only hope was this once a month infusion that may give me this fatal brain disease. And I'm like, all right, well, wheelchair bound at 35, at that point, being dead sounded better. Like, especially because I don't know what between wheelchair bound at 35, does that mean I'm going to be a vegetable at 50, but still have like all my cognition, just not my body? Like, to me, I took that as, again, not a death sentence, but almost worse.
Yeah.
It just sounds like they're giving up on you, honestly, when they say that. And when I first got diagnosed, I was like, not in denial, but I just kept living my life regularly. And then I met some people and we started going to the dinners that the drug reps have. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to learn about different disease modifying therapies. And everybody in the room was always like seriously disabled. Mm-hmm. They had difficulty walking, their balance was off, lots of wheelchairs in the room. And I had to stop going because I couldn't think of my future that way. I needed to do something different for me. So tell us, we see why you stumbled upon the HSCT. Because in my view, it seemed like you were both desperate to live. You're smart mm-hmm. ladies. You had ambition. It's interesting that you guys both went to the same doctor and you're both in the same profession and things. So tell us a little bit about your HSCT journey and what that entailed, because for me, I don't know if I could do that. And I think you guys are both very strong people for having gone through that, because I've seen pictures of you both when those things are occurring, and wow. So let's chat about that a bit.
Well, I know, as I mentioned, I think that, Julie's journey is a little bit different and happened before mine, but basically what happened to me was in 2019, at the very beginning of the year, I was on a cruise with one of my closest friends. We were doing a 14-day Panama Canal cruise. And on day 2, we were at sea, and the left side of my face from my cheek up and then all the way around my head went numb. So I knew I was having another relapse. So at dinner that night, I made sure I got a couple of drinks into her before I told her that I was having a relapse, because I knew she would freak out. And she did, in fact, freak out and said, okay, our next stop in Mexico, we're getting off and we're flying back. And I said, absolutely not, because all they're going to do is pump me full of steroids. We've been planning this trip. I want to do this trip. Let's do this. When we get back, I'll deal with things. And so when I did get home, I called my doctor on Monday morning and said, pretty sure I'm having a relapse. I'm numb from my cheek up and all the way back through my head, on my left side. And, and I did sleep quite a bit on the cruise. Like that was one of the weird things with all the relapses I had. It always started, like, my fatigue would get significantly worse. Like I always had fatigue, but it would get way worse, where the stimulants that I was prescribed, I could take those and go right back to sleep for 12 hours. That was always kind of a telltale sign that something was going on. And so he scheduled me for an MRI on Tuesday, but before that, like, he scheduled me to start steroids right away that day on Monday, and I was doing them outpatient. And so fortunately for me, I had a friend who had done not HSCT per se, like how Julie and I received it with Dr. Burt's protocol, but she had done a bone marrow stem cell transplant 9 years prior. and was better and was doing really well. And we had talked about this, for years. And I just always thought, oh, I'm not ready for the chemo. I don't, like I can find other things like there, I just wasn't ready. But when that MRI came back and I had 6 new lesions, my doctor broke up with me. He said, your MS is at the point where you need to go back and see a specialist. Now, he wanted to be a specialist in MS and he was very passionate about MS, but his practice, the group that he was with, the group of neurologists, didn't allow that. So he had to be like a general neurologist. And so he referred me back to an MS clinic. And so I started going there after I had finished that round of steroids. And my friend Vita and I started looking into me getting into one of the studies for HSCT. And so she called Seattle, where she had her study, because she knew the studies were still ongoing there, told them about me. And they said, okay, well, we're not actively recruiting, but Chicago is. And they gave her the direct phone number for Dr. Burt's office. And so in under 30 minutes, because of her contacts from having done it 9 years previously, doing something similar, I was on the phone with Chicago. They emailed me the paperwork. I filled out the paperwork. In order to get into the study at that point, and that study was called the MOST study, MOST. You had to have failed at least 2 DMTs. Well, I had failed 5.
Overachiever.
I'm a medical overachiever, 100% all the way. Now I'm blanking on what the other criteria was, but basically, I had met all the criteria and then some. And so, I sent the paperwork back in. And you had to have had, a serious relapse within the previous year. And so, obviously I just had one earlier that month. Mm-hmm. And so that was easy. And so, 6 new lesions. I've had MS at that point for 15 years. Things are quickly starting to go downhill. And I was also walking with a cane at that point too, because my balance was so bad. And so, I just kind of went about my life while, they scheduled me for an interview at the beginning of March. So, I was just kind of going about my life. With my friend Vita's help, she was coming to help me quite a bit. Cause again, like I said, I lived alone and, and I, couldn't go grocery shopping on my own necessarily. Like, I didn't feel safe driving a lot just because of how I felt. And so I had a lot of help from her, which is amazing. And then she actually came over to my house the last week in February. She didn't even have both feet in the door. And she looked at me and she's like, you're relapsing again. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, I can just tell. Get up, get dressed. I'm taking you to the emergency room.
Wow. And
lo and behold, I was relapsing again. So, just a month later, and I had 5 new lesions.
Wow.
And so they admitted me to the hospital for 6 days, and I did the IV steroids, and I did physical therapy and occupational therapy. And the only reason I was released after 6 days is because I had to go to Chicago to interview to get into the HSCT study.
Okay.
So, it turned into a crazy whirlwind from there.
It just sounds like at that point you were desperate for something.
I was absolutely desperate. And, I was admitted to the study on the spot. The neurologist that was pretty much the gatekeeper to see Dr. Burt, his name is Dr. Balabanov, and he's actually still my neurologist at Northwestern. He's amazing. He looked at, because I brought all of the MRIs that I had, but, especially the ones that I'd had in just the previous 2 months. And he's like, you just have so many lesions. You just have so many lesions. Like he kept looking at me and looking at the lesions. And the fact that I was able to walk with a cane was shocking. Like Julie was saying, for years, they would tell me, we just don't understand how you're still walking. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just really tired, or, I have vertigo or whatever. But like for years, they told me.
It's a testament. It's a testament to your will that you guys were fighters, right?
Yeah.
That's why I like to say that you're thriving, because really just the mere fact that you kept trying something else and trying something else, because what that thriving looks like is different for everybody, right?
Just like the disease. it's different for everybody. No two people are the same.
Absolutely. So when you guys went through, Julie, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the actual treatment that you received and what that entailed, what happened to your body, and the recovery process.
Yeah, so it's not super fun, not gonna lie. And I always disclaim when I'm talking to or think someone who hasn't done it may be listening, because I say that I had a relatively easy time of it. And when you say that to people who have been through it, it means one thing. But when you say it to someone who's never been through it, like my mother, for example, she's like, easy? Were we at the same place? I mean, what? You know, and I would do it again. I mean, other than the fact that the recovery process does take so long, I would do the inpatient, hospital, sick, lose your hair, chemo, feel like death once a year for the rest of my life if I had to, for the other 10 months out of the year that it would buy me. Yep. I mean, like I said, I actually didn't qualify for the trial because I was still only on my second drug, but Dr. Burt told me it's only a matter of time until you fail it. And so I'll treat you. And when you fail it, you may go from 0 to 100 and be too far for me to treat you. And so I think I can help you. Like, I know I can help you, but you have to choose to stop the drug and I'll treat you, you know, off study. So I did. And I kind of think, I mean, when you were saying earlier, Eddie, that, you know, you don't, I don't know if I could do that. With me, I felt like everything was just the perfect storm of lining up that, I mean, I live in Chicago, so the hospital was 30 minutes away. So sending the email saying, can I please have an evaluation? I'll literally come any day, anytime. You can call me and say, can you be here in an hour? And I will drop everything and be there. So I figured that would at least get me in the door.
That's your tenacity, right? I mean, never giving up, sounds like.
I mean, when all the other doctors are telling you there's nothing you can do, to be at that evaluation appointment with Dr. Burt, and he says, I know I can help you. You just have to trust me. I said, all right, what do you want to do? Like, here's my arms, IV me, screen, whatever you need to do. I am 100% yours, which was probably the hardest thing for me to do because I am a very type A personality. I like a plan A, B, and C, and for the next 10 years. And the only way I was able to relinquish the control was to be thinking that after all of this, I might regain control over my life again. And so what seemed like super scary, I kind of just thought, you know, I just need to close my eyes and push through it, and it'll all be over eventually. But the process itself, like I said, it's a little different for everyone, especially if you have to travel across the country or out of the country for some people. But for myself, because I was able to do it kind of as quickly as possible, it was a 2.5 month start to finish from 3 days of pre-testing, all outpatient in the hospital. They basically run every single test under the sun to make sure that you're healthy enough to essentially destroy your immune system and rebuild yourself back up. So, you know, MRIs, lung capacities, 30 vials of blood. I mean,
for everything.
They billed my insurance for the pre-testing alone, like $60,000 worth of medical tests. Jeez. So yeah, so they run everything. Very thorough. Yes, very thorough. So once you get approved through the pre-testing phase, you go and you do the 1 day inpatient in the hospital, which we all kind of refer to as like the, you know, the practice run, because it's one night. So you go, you get one big dose of chemo, you spend the night in the hospital, you make your list of everything you wish you would have brought for when you're stuck in there for 2 weeks, you know, in a couple of weeks. And you get that first chemo. So you get a small dose of the symptoms and suffering that may or may not come after. After my first dose, I mostly was just tired. I mean, they did give me the best advice I got from someone before me was to not be a hero. Don't try to be, oh, I don't need the nausea meds. I don't need the pain meds. If they're offering you it, there is a reason. And if you don't think you need it, they know you're going to need it. So take it so you don't need it. And
so you don't suffer.
Exactly.
Right?
And there was one day that I was like, I'm just so tired. Don't wake me up at 2 a.m. for the meds. If I need them, I'll wake up. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done because I woke up at 3 a.m., puking my brains out, crying my eyes out, in more pain and nausea. I was like, oh my, all the drugs. The drugs, give them to me. And can I get them like 15 minutes before, because you can start to feel them wearing off, the pain meds and the anti-nauseas. And so, like I said, the first round wasn't terrible, but I knew that was one round. And when I went back, it was going to be 5. So it kind of helped prepare me, at least mentally, for it. And then, they send you home or to the hotel if you're from out of state. You stay home and rest, and basically for 5 days after your first chemo, you give yourself Neupogen shots, which are essentially, you're always making stem cells like in your bloodstream and your bone marrow, but these shots basically make your body produce, I don't know, like 10 times, or maybe it's 100 times. I don't know. It's a lot more stem cells. Yeah, it's like tons and tons more than you normally produce, to the point where once you've been doing it for a couple of days, I mean, I'm super short, so I never had that issue growing up where they talk about like growing pains and your legs hurt, like if you have a big growth spurt. Now I know what that feels like. The bone pain, it was like nothing I have ever experienced before in my life. It was the most painful thing. And it thankfully only lasted about 24 hours with the whole first chemo and the shots and all that. But again, then when you go inpatient, it's like double, triple, so it's like you kind of do this precursor of little bits of what you're going to do for the big show. And then once you have you do 5 days of the shots, and then you go to the hospital, to the blood clinic, and they hook you up to, of course, do you know what it's called, Cassidy?
It's essentially like the same sort of machine that's used for dialysis.
Yeah.
And so
they
put a gas pack in your neck,
and
you take your blood out, and the machine separates out your new stem cells, your new undamaged stem cells, the stem cells that the MS hasn't gotten to because you had the chemo, and then you quickly stimulated new stem cells. And so they're drawing those out to then give back to you when your immune system is completely depleted and you're in the hospital. So then
I was wondering where the stem cells came from.
Those stem cells, actually, you can see them like spinning around in a circle, and you look down. I actually have a video of it that I can send you. It's really cool.
It looks like peanut butter.
You can see them like in there, and then watch, the rest of the blood goes back into your body, into this, lovely neck thing. But yeah, you sit there in this chair for like 8 hours. You're hooked up to the machine. I mean, you got to go to the bathroom. All right, everyone can step out, and here's your bedpan.
Oh,
you can't.
You're hooked up to this. I mean, my mom was there. My sister came in for a little bit, and it's like, thanks for hanging out. Okay, I got to go to the bathroom. Everyone step out. Nurse brings the thing in, and
when I was in college,
first time for everything.
When I was in college, I had to use a bedpan. I had an abscess on my tonsils, and so I was in the hospital. That thing, I cannot master that. I can't imagine doing it all day. Like, no, that is quite. I mean, I made a mess.
Well, you think that's fun. Wait until you go in for the whole actual big thing, and you're getting 5 days of chemo with all the other stuff that they pump into you. And I mean, I was fully mobile no mobility issues at all when I checked in for the actual stem cell transplant. So you go in 6 days before your transplant date and you get 5 days of chemo beforehand. And again, everyone before me, even if they were completely mobile, they said, get the catheter. I'm like, a catheter? I can get out of bed, up and out of bed. It's no problem. I know I'll be, tired and feeling crappy, but really that crappy? And oh yeah, I mean, not only does it not work properly if you're not like the exact right size and this and making a mess and everywhere. And I was just like, I am a 31-year-old, completely mobile, perfectly seemingly feeling healthy woman laying in this bed, and they're about to like make me seem sick. Like I went in looking as healthy as I do now. I mean, minus my hair because it all falls out after the first go around. But the first time anyone from my family, I think, actually realized how sick I was when I voluntarily signed up to make myself that sick. It was such an eye opener to, I think, so many people.
Because it's weird for them because they can't tell you're sick, right?
Right.
So they're going on your thoughts and they're like, I think she might be, exaggerating.
Right. I got a lot of comments of like, when they're like, well, what is the process? What is it? I mean, the minute you say chemo to anyone, that brings your treatment to a certain level. And then they say, oh, like the kind where you lose your hair. Yeah, that kind. So now you're up here. And I mean, I can't even tell you how many people said, like, why would you choose to do that when, I mean, your MS isn't really that bad? And I was like, well, that's exactly it. What you see is not what is actually happening. And I think that it really made it more obvious to people, unfortunately. But then when I left the hospital, bald as a cucumber and perfectly feeling healthy, I looked worse than I ever had on the outside. But on the inside, I was like, I feel amazing. This is great. Like,
So you started to feel better right away?
Yeah. I mean, within 24 hours. My vision cleared up within 24 hours and has been 20/20 ever since. I noticed, I think there might have been literally instant changes, but I was so dead tired and drained and done that day. I got my stem cells back around 10:30 in the morning, and I think I was just in and out of sleep most of the rest of the day. But that next morning, it was like a fog came off my eyes, off my brain, out of my legs, and not everything snapped overnight, but I mean, my vision, it was, I don't know. It was a miracle. I don't know, a scientific miracle, whatever you want to call it. It was.
What's the success rate with this process?
85%. Better than
like 85% or something after 5 to 7 years. And then like 70, I can send you some of the stats that I have on it. It's like high 70s after 9 to 10 years. I mean, they've only been doing it for MS and autoimmune disease for in the realm of like 20 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't be like, oh, it works for 60 years because there hasn't been that long. So I figured worst case scenario, I mean, obviously worst case scenario, it doesn't work, but even if it works for 5 to 7 years, oh, hands down, I do it once every 5 years. I'd book it in my calendar right now for every 5 years until I'm 80. No question.
Wow.
And for a while, I had a brief scare that they call you a non-responder if you're part of that 15%. And I had a brief scare of that last year into this year. And Julie actually went to the appointment with me in March. It was March 1st, the very beginning of MS Awareness Month. And we went in to Dr. Balabanov with the game plan. Like we were going to lawyer him into getting me HSCT again. You know, if I was a non-responder, I wanted to know, okay, how long until I can get it again? Because, okay, maybe it didn't take the first time, but, you know, none of the medications are working. You know, I played that game for 15 years and none of them were working. And I would much rather try this again and again and again until it sticks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I just think you guys are so brave, incredibly strong women. So what are you guys doing now? I know that you were attorneys. Are you still doing that? What is your life like?
I am back in action. I've been practicing again for 2 years now. And just recently, after the HSCT, I kind of went back to the least stressful legal job I could find while I figured out what I really wanted to do, because I used to do all family law, which is like the most stressful law in the world. And even my neurologist was like, please love your body enough not to go back to that, at least not full time. Like, do it a little bit if you must, because I really loved it. But in the past year, I've restructured my practice to revolve around stuff I learned while I was doing my stem cell transplant, like disability law and guardianships and estate planning and wills. And because, you know, when someone says you might die when this happens, you draft your will at 29 or 30, you know? So now it's kind of, while I was diagnosed with MS and thought my legal career was over, I think it actually just was the thing that needed to re-put me on the track I'm supposed to be on with my legal career right now.
Super smart decisions to still go with your passion, but yet do what's right for you. I love that. I love it. What about you, Cassidy? What are you doing?
Well, it's funny because all the stuff that Julie has learned since HSCT was actually what I did before, but most of the stuff that I did was litigation. And so it was fighting about wills and fighting about trusts. And I became one of the experts on guardianship and conservatorship law in Nebraska while I was practicing. And I helped draft some of the legislation, and, I was very heavily involved in that, but it was really high stress for me. And so I know, now 6 years being disabled, that I don't want to do that again. And so what I have started doing is building a consulting business, a legal consulting business. And so I do legal writing and consulting for certain kinds of cases, and, how to build a law practice, because I did that myself 11 years ago this month. I went out on my own and I had a very successful law practice, and I grew my office. I had an associate attorney, I had support staff, and, and that part was great, but it's more than what I can handle right now. Like I'm looking at only working part-time for quite a while. I don't know that I will ever get back to full-time work, just because I have had MS so much longer and have more like permanent damage. But, the fact that I can't even say that I will be able to work part-time, and that I am, pretty much working part-time right now, is huge, because I do have a case that I'm working on for somebody in Nebraska, which is where, my legal career was. I was licensed in Nebraska and in Iowa. And so I still have so many connections there. So I'm doing, helping with cases there. And I'm starting to do some coaching, legal coaching for younger lawyers and things of that nature. So, and I'm much more passionate about that. And I like having the control over, so this is my second business that I've launched. And both times, I had MS this whole time. And so I know I can do this again. And I'm excited for a fresh start, and excited to do less stressful things, because I finally learned my lesson with not listening to my body and overworking and, doing too much too fast. And Julie knows I harp on her every once in a while when she gets too deep into stuff. I'm like, Julie, don't be me. Like, I'm the example, like you had HSCT before me. And so, she has had a much better overall recovery because she didn't have as much permanent damage. But, I don't walk with a cane anymore. When I showed up actually for HSCT, I was going blind. I was having another relapse. So I had 3 relapses in less than 6 months in 2019 before I even had HSCT. And so, it was a very quick downward spiral. And I know unequivocally, without a doubt, that had I not had HSCT, because I was already walking with a cane, I would be wheelchair bound right now. And I'm not walking with a cane. I actively still do physical therapy to work on my balance because I still have balance issues, things like that. But, I'm functional, and I wasn't for a long time. So it's pretty exciting.
Every time I interact with you guys, I learn so much more about MS, about the HSCT process, and all of it. And I just, I thank you so much for that and sharing your stories, because people need to hear everything. Every single person with this disease has different reactions. It is not the same for every person. And you need to make decisions for yourself that work for you. And so hearing another perspective, another opportunity, another option for people is just invaluable. And I want to thank you for that. So before we go, though, I told you in our pre-conference here that my core values are growth and humor. So we've had the growth part of the show, and now I'd like to ask you some rapid fire questions just to get to know you guys as people and not MS warriors so much. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to go every other question for every other person. Okay. So Julie, what makes you laugh?
My niece.
Because she's just cute and hilarious?
Because she just says all the things that you want to say, but she's 6, so she has no mouth filter. So I guess basically anything without a mouth filter.
Yeah.
I love it. That's great. That's great. And I'm glad she's in your life to bring you that joy. Cassidy, what is your favorite way to enjoy your day?
My favorite way to enjoy my day, actually, some of my best days are with Julie, hanging out, drinking Prosecco and red Prosecco for her, red wine for me, and my dog. He's my emotional support animal. He's 14 years old, so he kind of goes everywhere with me. He's just my little shadow, and those are the best days. And Julie and I just spent Memorial Day weekend together and did some of that, and it was great. That's just relaxing and chilling and knowing that I have a life, that I'm looking at not being disabled forever, because when I became disabled 6 years ago, there was no hope that I was ever going to not be disabled, especially with a disease like MS. And so, like, the fact that I can just sit and enjoy life and realize that I have a future, it's the best thing ever.
When I started doing, getting prep for the podcast, I started reaching out to a lot of people, and I've just started to form such strong bonds with people that I never knew even existed. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this MS journey that I'm on currently is about building community. And it is lovely to see the friendship that has formed between you both in this process to support one another. I don't think that I could get through a lot of what I do without my friend Melissa. Yeah. Because I lean on her, and nobody else really understands how we feel and what we're going through except another MSer. So I love that. Julie, dog or cat?
Dog.
Cassidy, Eiffel Tower or Empire State Building?
Eiffel Tower.
Julie, Australia or Hawaii?
Australia.
Julie lived in Australia.
Yeah, so that was an easy one.
That's awesome. Well, that's a whole nother show. Right? I'd love to hear about that.
But I guess I should say Hawaii since I've never been there. So I don't know.
That's kind of what I thought.
That's tough.
And I say Eiffel Tower because I'm a big international traveler, and I haven't been I haven't been there yet. So
There you go.
Yeah, new experiences, right?
Yeah.
You can't leave those stones unturned because
that's what it's about.
that's correct. I used to think it was about building a beautiful home with all the right stuff in it, and it is not about that at all. Not for me anyway.
Especially once you have MS and you got to clean that house then. I used to think the same thing, and now I'm like, that's so tiny house. That's really appealing.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, there's
simplification.
a specific reason that I downsized from a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Omaha, Nebraska to a studio apartment in Chicago, because I can experience more here and I have less cleaning.
Exactly.
So, and and when my laundry gets out of control and I'm not feeling well, Julie will come pick it up. She'll do it horribly for me, but she'll do it.
Hey, it's a thought that counts.
What would you do without each other? Seriously.
Exactly.
I love this.
Yeah.
So before we go, one more thing. I want you to be able to tell people where to find you if they have questions, want to seek some answers for anything that we've talked about today and beyond. So Cassidy, where can people find you?
The best way to find me, I guess it's twofold. I do have a newer Instagram account that kind of documents my MS journey and things of that nature. And it's called recovering.esquire. Esquire is spelled ESQUIRE, because I started a blog, Recovering Esquire, as soon as I became disabled. And so now I have the Instagram account, the difference just being that there's a period in between the two words. And then also on Clubhouse. I'm very active on Clubhouse as well. And, and I go by Cassidy Chapman. So, even if you just Google Cassidy Chapman, Omaha attorney, it usually pops up with some of my contact information because I was around there for so long.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And the Esquire is for the attorney side of you, correct?
Correct. Yeah. That's why I call myself the Recovering Esquire.
That's a great line. I love that. Julie, what about you? Where can we find you?
So I'm actually on Instagram too. I am at JEDomina, DOMINA, as my shirt says, dominating MS. It's also my married name is Domina. But I also am the co-founder and vice president of the nonprofit organization HSCT Warriors. We have a lot of information, obviously, all about HSCT. So that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me if you're not a social media type person. It's Everhart at hsctwarriors.org. Or like I said, you can fill out, we have all those contact us forms, but yeah, my first initial last name at HSCT Warriors or on Instagram.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for chatting with us today, ladies.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you. Yes, this was fun.
It's a really great experience. Okay. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
You too.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Thriving Over Surviving podcast. If you would like to join our growing community of thrivers, there are a lot of ways to do so. Find us on Instagram at Thriving Over Surviving Podcast. Our Facebook group has the same name. In our brand new website, subscribe to my newsletter where I share insider information from our guests. You can also view my blog there. You can find us on YouTube and everywhere else you may listen to your podcasts. Remember to subscribe, download, like, and hit the bell to be in the know. Although I am a doctor, my expertise is in educational leadership and not in medicine. The information provided on this show is for community building purposes and not meant to provide medical advice. Should you have medical questions that you need answered, please consult your medical professional. We'll see you next time as we chat it up on another episode of Thriving Over Surviving podcast.